About a week out from the NFL draft, the Atlanta Falcons have 5 picks: 48, 79, 122, 215, and 231. And assuming no trade backs or trade ups or any personnel trades, there's enough intel just from positional needs, philosophy of management, and response to 30 visits and just general visits of the like to piece together enough of what I consider a Falcons board for each slot going into the draft. I'm going to look at about 5 players per spot that we can project the Falcons to look at. I think when we look back after next week, we're going to see a couple of hits on here. The motto of the first pick for the Falcons at 48 is one's got to make it there. And when you hear some of these names, you're going to be like, they're not going to make it to 48. Not everybody can be a top 40 pick, particularly in a class like this. And the draft is reality TV. Names are going to fall. There are value opportunities. And I think that's some of the mindset going into this 48th pick. I would start firstly with the most popular consensus pick for the Falcons here. Though I'm not certain he makes it there, there's opinions that he does. Take, for example, Dane Brugler in his recent 7-round mock draft, having the Falcons taken University of Georgia defensive tackle Christen Miller. I think this is the best case scenario at this pick. 6'4", 321 pounds. He is svelte at that size. I mean, I thought he played more along the lines of 305, 310, 312. Comes in at 321 at the combine. Looks phenomenal. Played everywhere from 0 tech to 5 tech. Violently handed. As strong a motor as you're going to find. Rangy speed at the position. Is well coached. Has the length for a swim move. A stab as well. Handles double teams very well, projecting Miller coming into this Falcons defensive line with a young influx of talent, the likes of Aruka Roro, the likes of Brandon Dorless, the likes of Zach Harrison, etc. Being a local product, we talk about him coming from the University of Georgia. His high school, Cedar Grove, is a whopping 11 miles from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. If he's there, he's the pick. Similarly fashioned, would say Florida's Caleb Banks at that defensive tackle spot. My favorite player, not best player, favorite player from summer scouting, mammoth of a human being, haven't seen him up close at the Senior Bowl. 6'6" and a quarter, that being 98th percentile in height, 327 pounds, 89th percentile. And then it gets really freaky. I mean, 10 and 7/8 inch hands, 94th percentile, 35-inch arms at 94th percentile, and then the ultimate, 85 and 3/4 inch wingspan. That is the second longest by a quarter inch of the entire 2000s of the NFL Combine. God don't make a lot of them like Caleb Banks. The best of him, the highlights of the tape, he's a lock top 15 player in this class. It's just finding that balance between 2-foot injuries he's had, being that large. But man, at 48, the value's too good to pass up on should he be there. I think between he and Miller, it goes back to the motto of this 48th pick. One of them's got to fall. For the amount of defensive tackles that can go up until this point, maybe one of them's there. 4.5 sacks in 2024, matching the God-given physique, matching the testing, and then flipping it over to the smaller players at corner. Brandon Cisse out of South Carolina, my corner 7 in this class. I think he's there at 48. And if not, it's right there. I mean, he's right in the wheelhouse. You're talking about a lot of lower body explosiveness at 6 foot, 190 pounds, a 41-inch vertical, a 10-11 broad. Those are just absurd numbers to project him in a corner 2 role opposite of A.J. Terrell, thrown in a rotation with Mike Hughes coming up here on the last year of a deal and projecting Cisse beyond. If that's your consolation prize here at 48, you're sitting pretty, setting yourself up going into pick 79. And then here, probably the most unbelievable as far as being there, but we have to listen. What has been a rough pre-draft for Clemson DB Aveion Terrell, brother of A.J. Terrell, as we just mentioned. 5'11", 187, I believe he came in at the combine. Better size than anticipated. Knew he'd be in the 180s. But having said that, just been battling a hamstring in this process. Ran mid-4.6s at his pro day workout. But that's about as valid as a $3 bill. He's been banged up. And this happens every year. There's some guys that just battling an injury, battling timing, not having a good day. But you cut on the tape, you see the production. I don't care if you were to think he's small for boundary corner. Look at the ball production. 8 forced fumbles the last 2 seasons is astronomical. Absolutely astronomical ball production out of Terrell. He is tough as hell, combating blockers, plays way beyond his weight class, very fluid in his lower body, good twitch, the versatility of being able to play outside and in the nickel spot. He's my corner 3, and I think the floor would have to be corner 4. You look up, and he has fallen at 48. Maybe a team, in that run of corners, I anticipate between about 20, 25 up until 50. Maybe somebody favors a D'Angelo Pond schematically. Maybe someone favors Cisse, who we just talked about, and some of his size profile and the health. Maybe somebody prefers a Chris Johnson out of San Diego State as an off-zone corner who I think will be the 3rd off of the board. It's just going to keep pushing some of these corners down. Only so many can go up until this point of the 48th pick in this draft. Between these two, similarly to how we talked about the 2 defensive tackles a while ago, one of them can be there. That's the motto of this 48th pick. And I'll tell you, Terrell's there. Obviously the connection with his brother, the production at Clemson, the size profile, the speed, the twitch, all the great production on tape, paired with the fact he's a Westlake High School product, it'd be too good to say no to throw into this room. And lastly, who I've been claiming at this 48 pick going back to December, Alabama receiver Germie Bernard. 6'1", 206 pounds. This is just 7 and 8s across the board. No holes in his game. Look at the 3-cone. Best in the class, and it wasn't close. A 6'7", astronomical compared to second place at a 6'8", 3rd place at a 6'9", a 9.03 relative athletic score. Lines up in the slot, outside, even in the backfield at times with all that versatility. 2.5% drop rate his entire career. Anything under 10 is good. Anything under 5 is fantastic. 2.5 is astronomical. You also see those strong, reliable hands with no fumbles during his career. This is just a you can't mess this up pick to throw into a rotation, likely taking the receiver 2 spot, cementing Jahan Dotson at receiver 3. Bernard did just complete a 30 visit on the last day of 30 visits, that being Wednesday here. Just have to mention the familiarity with Michael Penix Jr. Played at Alabama, but previously at Washington in that strong receiver room with the likes of Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, Denzel Boston. Bernard was even getting significant playing time there. At pick 79, similarly to how I discussed, I think if you were having a beer with Ian Cunningham or Matt Ryan and asked them, what is your realistic dream pick at each spot? We mentioned Christen Miller at 48. 79, I think it's North Dakota State wide receiver Bryce Lance. Brother of Trey Lance, 6'3", 204 pounds, lengthy, but a vertical threat, man. 4.34 speed, was 5th in the group at the combine with all that size. A 1.49 10-yard split. Even more impressively, 2nd in the group. It just keeps going as far as the testing. 41.5-inch vertical, 11.1 broad, both top 4 at the position. This is an athletic freak who you match production. You look at a North Dakota State offense, had Cole Payton at quarterback, I think goes QB3 in this draft. Barika Pinu, who I think is as underrated as any player in this draft at running back. The explosiveness there. The last 2 seasons, 126 catches, 2,132 yards, 25 touchdowns for Lance. You throw this guy in here with a Jahan Dotson to battle it out for receiver 2 behind Drake London, with your floor being a receiver 3 ahead of Alameda Zacchaeus at that veteran receiver 4 spot. This is a homer. I think this is who they have circled. I think he's there at 79. That the range lines up perfectly. I've got Lance circled in red Sharpie at this point. And then more of the fan favorite here locally. Throwing it to another Bulldog, Zachariah Branch has got to be in discussion. The genes to pair with having an uncle and Raiders Hall of Famer Cliff Branch at the receiver spot. 4.36 speed. Not convinced he couldn't get better than that. I'm telling you, you watch that run in Indianapolis, he had a stumble at that point. I think he could have gone lower into the 4.3s, in that 4.35, 4.36 range is what he did clock. 81 catches, 811 yards, and 6 touchdowns this past season. And you hear that and say, okay, about 10 yards a catch. And then you look at his average depth of target. He's within about 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. That was what was catered to in this offense. I mean, you look at the production of Georgia receivers, 81 catches for Branch. Second place was 27 catches. The offense ran through this guy. He was the identity paired with quarterback Gunnar Stockton. And I think he's the best punt returner, kick returner in the class. I understand the conversation of a Caden Wygen out of Iowa, but pairing that additionally with the receiver ability, you side with Branch. I mean, 15 punt returns for 180 yards, 10 kick returns for 205 yards. All of this coming from a 5'9", 177-pounder, 9-inch hands, 29 and 3/8-inch arms. But he's strong as hell. I mean, 20 reps on the bench at that size, pound for pound, is as strong as you're going to find at any position in this class. I think for what the Falcons really are looking for and need as far as that security blanket for a Michael Penix Jr., security blanket for a Tua Tagovailoa, or get even deeper, a security blanket for a young quarterback going into the 2027 draft, should that be the situation the Falcons find themselves in. Branch is that from day one. And lastly, as far as receivers at the 79 spot, because I really do think this third, fourth round pick is the sweet spot for local product Ted Hurst out of Georgia State. And in addition to that, now 17 yards per catch during his time at Valdosta State. Georgia State seasons, 127 catches, 1,965 yards, and 15 touchdowns. This uber production, it keeps going. Led FBS the last 2 seasons in catches of 20-plus air yards at 6'4", 206. As far as making money for yourself, putting a stamp of approval, silencing doubters, I thought his 4.42 at Indianapolis did about as good as anybody. Talking about the long speed to pair with that size profile he does have. Senior Bowl was such a show. I can tell you this was the hardest interview to get at the Senior Bowl, in my opinion. For me to have literally talked to Hurst all but walking up the concourse to go back to the locker room and get a Gatorade, was lucky to get that. Beamed about head coach Del McGee at Georgia State, formerly running back coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, legendary high school head coach at Carver Columbus. Was beaming about the potential of being in a Falcons receiver room. I think he's here at 79. That'd be about pushing it to where he'll last. You look up and he's there. It's definitely a discussion to be had. And I want to round out as far as the 2 on the board for pick 79, looking at about 5 apiece. Let's look at the 2 corners that there's been interest in terms of visits and in terms of what you project the Falcons needing. Georgia Bulldog Daylen Everette at 6'1", 196, can tell you from interviewing him at the Senior Bowl, as well proportionally built of a corner as you're going to find, period, but particularly in this class. No thinness in his body. And as prepared of a corner prospect to be my corner 11, he's as prepared as the 10 ahead of him. Former IMG recruit, top 40 recruit when he signed with the Dogs, 3-year starter under Kirby Smart, as well coached as you're going to find, technical, not afraid of contact, and an uber athlete. I mean, a 9.88 relative athletic score is testing, sub 4.4 speed. Press man ability, really the only knock somebody's going to have on the profile of Everette is maybe having a little too much cushion, being a little comfortable in off-zone coverage. But you tweak that going into the league. I think a lot of that is the defense that Bulldogs played, some of that security blanket of not letting it get over the top. In this Falcons rotation, competing with Mike Hughes as far as that CB2, CB3, this is a future starter for you with all the press man ability you could want opposite of AJ Terrell. And lastly, you throw it over to Florida Gator Devin Moore. My CB15 in this class. The ding on the flip side from Moore's just going to be some past shoulder injuries and how comfortable teams are with him. But I think at this point, you can bet on 6'3", 196-pound size, only allowing 28 catches, 312 yards, and no touchdowns in his career. Teams don't go at him. They don't throw at him when he's on the field. 4 interceptions in 2024. But showed wellness in 2025 and really can build off that, sell that to teams. I think either one of those is also a similar sweet spot, projecting that the Falcons ideally would like to go with a big man at pick 48. Pick 122, though I think the sweet spot for receiver for the Falcons is at 79, It's nice to have that contingency plan of, let's say somebody's fallen to 79, you didn't anticipate. The value's too good elsewhere. Let's look at some of the receivers available here. Cyrus Allen out of Cincinnati gets a 30 visit from the Falcons. That started off just telling you this was unanimously the best route runner at the Senior Bowl. I mean, it was laughable he didn't get an NFL Combine after that. 16.2 yards per catch in his career, along with 13 touchdowns. To be consensus number 182, I think Allen goes higher than that for a team that really wants a nuanced route runner with some of his best football likely ahead of him. Another receiver keeping it going, and this might be the most interest and positive reaction that we've heard out of the Falcons, and that being Missouri receiver Kevin Coleman. 5'10", 179 pounds. Jackson State, Louisville, Mississippi State, and then ultimately at Missouri this year, 199 career receptions, 2,536 yards, 12 touchdowns, and then 8.2 yards per punt return. A lot of versatility there with Coleman. Great route runner. Saw that up close at the Senior Bowl. A lot of twitch, projecting what the Falcons need as far as spreading it downfield. I really like this spot. Consensus 168. It's going to be interesting to see. This could be a hair early, but for all the interest the Falcons have, they might have this pegged to saying we're comfortable going a little bit earlier with our vision for Coleman. And lastly, now having fixed my glasses that have been mildly broken, thank you to my 15-month-old, Baylor wide receiver Josh Cameron. 30 visit with the Falcons, 6'1 and a quarter, 223 pounds. Can tell you from our Senior Bowl interview, so well built, so humble, so well spoken. And any receiver that wears the number 34 has got a little something different to him. Former walk-on, turned that into 36 starts at Baylor. 2-time first-team Big 12. 13.2 yards per catch. 19 touchdowns the last 2 seasons. A 5% drop rate, with anything under 10 being good, anything under 5 being exceptional. Loved the quote got from him at the Senior Bowl. Quote, "I'd be fortunate to come into that Atlanta receiver room with a learner's mindset behind Drake London." Could not have been more impressed with Cameron. So much upside, the build of a thick running back. Love seeing that 30 visit. And lastly, as far as this spot, let's look at its 2 offensive linemen. If I had to pick who I think, similarly to how we said 48, I think Christen Miller's the dream. 79, I think Bryce Lance is the dream. 122, I think Memphis offensive tackle Travis Burke's the dream. I mean, 6'9", 325 pounds. This is a mammoth human being to come in with swing tackle ability out of the gate and with the potential and the projection to develop into a year 2 starter at one of those tackle spots, particularly coming off the retirement of Caleb McGarry, the 1-year deal with Jawan Taylor at right tackle. 29 starts at left tackle, collegiately 16 at right tackle. Violent run blocker. Violent. This is a guy that knows he has size and uses it to his advantage. A 9.01 relative athletic score. Very good athlete, very good bend, very good speed. All of it. Complete profile at the size. 34 and a quarter inch arms. Love Burke. Burke is my favorite tackle outside of that first 7 or so. He's in that 8 to 10 tackle range for me. And then to round out this pick, and then really looking at the offensive interior that's been some of the discussion, 30 visit out of Iowa guard Beau Stephens. This is one of the more underrated interiors in this class, just in terms of the media and the discussion we've been getting. 6'5 and a half, 315 pounds. Look at the production. 4 pressures allowed this year. He averages 1 penalty a season. 0 sacks allowed the last 3 years. To be a primary left guard, he's got enough right guard snaps to project that versatility. I think his experience with all that outside zone you see out of Iowa offensive linemen really matches a lot of the Falcons' zone concepts. This is a year 1 backup depth interior offensive lineman that you project to have starter ability. For picks 215 and 231, I think it's easiest to just combine that as a board for the Falcons with those picks with a cluster of about 5 guys. Starting with Georgia Tech cornerback Ahmari Harvey. 4 visits at this point, 4 points of contact, including a pro day, the combine 30 visit, etc. for the Falcons and Harvey. The local product at 5'11", 179. Make no mistake, that weight can be a little misleading. For this guy will knock the hell out of you. Violent player, 26 starts worth of experience, great zone feel for passing off assignments that'd be applicable to what he would see in Atlanta and Jeff Ulbrich defense. Second lowest catch rate allowed of ACC cornerbacks at 45.5%, and just a dog in press as well. The versatility, the strong hands to high point the football, that many points of contact for the Falcons. I think it's all but certain they've got him circled for one of these 2 7th-round spots. Moving from there, Justin Jefferson, linebacker out of Alabama. 6 feet, 3/8, 223 pounds, smaller side, but has the things he has to have at that size. 4.54 speed, the explosiveness in his lower body to boast a 38.5-inch vertical and a 10.5 broad. Incredible numbers, and somebody that loves contact beyond his size. A compact thud into ball carriers, stoning them where they stand, and trusted in coverage. Half of his snaps over his tenure at Alabama were coverage snaps, paired with the production of 5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles the last 2 seasons. To throw somebody with that kind of athleticism into a rotation with youth like a Christian Harris, a Channing Tindall that have been added recently to a Divine Diablo and company, I think this lines up for the Falcons to, of their needs and only 5 picks, they're going to have to wait and go later and go more rotational with one. I think it could be linebacker with somebody like Jefferson. Jack Strand, quarterback out of Minnesota Moorhead. Don't let the small school make you question it, man. 6'3" and 7/8, 243 pounds. This is a big prototype size quarterback prospect. Can zip it in tight windows. I think as much as any quarterback in this class. For him to be my QB 14 in my final quarterback rankings with an average of 13 going in the draft. So really teetering right on this get drafted, be a priority, undrafted free agent. I think it's a sweet spot for the Falcons. They want to take a swing on a developmental in a QB3 spot now, and then going into next season with the questions surrounding Michael Penix Jr., surrounding Tua Tagovailoa and that 1-year addition. 13,155 passing yards in 42 starts, 126 touchdowns to pair with functional legs, the likes of nearly 300 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns this past season. Strand's got incredible upside, particularly for something different. To have the prototype size profile versus the 2 you got in the building. To be right-handed versus what you have in the building. To have that functionality as far as his run game, but to pair it with statistical passing and like I said, just the ability to fit into tight windows. That 30 visit for the Falcons and Strand was very exciting to me. And you could transition that real quick over to another quarterback. And being a local product in Georgia Tech quarterback Haynes King, showing a little love to him on the flats here with these 2 7th-round picks. Threw for nearly 10,000 yards and ran for nearly 2,500 in his college career. Tough as hell. I think he's as tough as any quarterback in this class. To pair with that statistical production, having played through injury, was a dark horse early on in some Heisman conversations. To kind of have that versatility of using him in packages, his mobility, that could be an interesting one too. Teetering on that, get drafted, be a priority, undrafted free agent. I think he and Strand are a nice sweet spot for the Falcons to look at a quarterback to bring into this room behind the 2 that they have. And then lastly, as far as the 7th-round board, there's been a 30 visit, there's been points of contact, and justified interest in Washington offensive lineman Carver Willis. Versatile offensive lineman who can play all 5 spots. That's going to fire up needy teams. And not really to say the Falcons' offensive line is needy, but they need the bodies rotationally. And you look at his snap count the last 3 years, 587 snaps at left tackle, 1,186 at right tackle, and then a handful at left guard. But he has been quoted as saying that teams have asked, and he has shown that interest to teams. He's been training interior offensive line spots, all 3, including center, since the Senior Bowl to really build up his draft profile. It's 6'5", 303 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, and 9.5-inch hands. He's right there in that sweet spot to be able to hang at tackle, particularly as a swing and a backup, to be able to hang with the sand in the pants there at guard and really stand out as a potential center prospect. When you look at what the Falcons already have in the room at a 7th-round price, I think Willis might get me as fired up as anyone in this group for the Falcons, looking at those 2 picks that they really got to get some value out of, particularly rotationally.